Folks, we are joined by Joseph Curl, political correspondent, White House reporter for the Washington Times, broken some of the biggest stories in the last 20 years politically, and that's why he also is one of the heavy hitters, the few, the proud, the drudges over at drudgereport.com. Who can say that? Not many, ladies and gentlemen. And I introed this with "You ain't seen nothing yet," because when you have Congressman Devin Nunes coming out and saying, look, they were spying on the cloakroom and Congress, and that's a separation of powers violation. Well, yeah, can you imagine if the Congress was spying on the White House with illegal wiretaps? And he's like, does that rise to impeachment? I don't know. Does Charlie Manson cutting babies out of Sharon Tate's stomach rise to murder? I mean, it's like, well, it is the president, you know, maybe he's allowed to I mean, even the Republicans cannot get hardcore with things that are just out in the open, because our normalcy bias is to accept anything. It's like we have mass Stockholm syndrome. But let me tell you, political catastrophe, political Waterloo, political rigor mortis is setting in to the Obama administration with, I don't know, I don't remember, I know nothing, I'm Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes, with all of them. They're being caught lying on Benghazi, the IRS spying, the whistleblower persecutions, the wiretapping, all of it. They're in deep trouble. And that's why you've got Bill Press saying, you know, the Attorney General needs to step down, and Obama, and Chris Matthews says his leg doesn't get the tingle up into his, you know, groin anymore over this. And all of these people are running scared. The Atlantic Wire, that basically is a White House organ, says, is the end of the Eric Holder's tenure at the Justice Department. It's not enough to throw him under the bus. Not enough to go, all of them. Okay, they need to go to jail. These guys make Nixon look like an angel compared to the things they've done and what they've been caught doing. And joining us is Joseph Curl of the WashingtonTimes.com and DrudgeReport.com, the guy who really has the inside scoop. Will it be Benghazi? Will it be IRS Gate? Will it be Spygate? Will it be Intimidation Gate? Will it be Perjury Gate? Will it be, I mean, can we bring back Fast and Furious now? Will this bring down Obama, and what do you expect them to try to do to stop it? What is the inside intel directly from the belly of the beast, the District of Criminals, Joe Curl?
Hey, Alex.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, the most fascinating thing that's been happening so far, the thing that really intrigues me out of this whole, now this train of messes, but as you mentioned, Fast and Furious is still hanging out there. We've never really gotten any answers on that. But the most amazing thing, and it just keeps happening, is the lack of accountability from the administration. It's really, you know, my buddy over at the Washington Post, Dana Milbank, wrote today that the Holder seemed almost proud to not know anything. You know, what you've got over in the Justice Department now is he recused himself from this whole AP, you know, seizing the phone records of the Associated Press, and he literally sat in front of congressmen and just said, I don't know anything. I mean, he was called in front of Congress, and then he said for 4 hours, I don't know anything. And then you've got Hillary. She's not involved doesn't know anything about Benghazi Gate. You've got, you know, now we're hearing that the White House is trying to spin the whole IRS mess as a couple of low-level guys in Cincinnati who were just rogue operators who were doing something. Nobody knows anything. The weirdest thing, and I was talking to my dad the other night about, he remembers all the way back to Eisenhower and Truman, and he was saying, you know, Harry Truman had a big placard on his desk that says the buck stops here. Right now, we don't know where this buck stops, but what Obama keeps saying is it sure as heck doesn't stop at me.
Well, we know where the buck stops. I mean, Obama gets his orders from the big unions, from the big foreign banks. He gets his orders from basically the socialist, the Communist Party. He gets his orders from the big tax-free foundations. I mean, he gets his orders from the heirs.
Right, and they're spending all of their time and effort. You know, I think it's not ludicrous to start talking about Richard Nixon, because this is the classic, and I wrote a column about this a couple of weeks ago in the Washington Times, the classic conundrum of the second term. These guys all get in messes, all the way back to Eisenhower, you know, with the U-2, and then you've had, you know, Reagan had Iran-Contra, Clinton, of course, had Monaco literally, and you had Bush, who who had his own problems and messes going on, and now you've got Obama with this. It's the biggest problem, and the way you can talk about Nixon in the same breath with Obama, even though these things are just starting, is it's all a cover-up. The cover-up of how they deal with the information once it's out there. We're starting to hear weird little things that, this IRS stuff was actually known years ago within the IRS and weeks ago at the White House, but nothing ever really came out of it until right before. The only reason they eventually put this out, or put it out when they did, was that the Inspector General's report was about to come out. They knew it was about to break anyway, so they had to dump it. So yeah, it's very strange what's happening, and it really makes me wonder. This is an administration that hasn't really had any scandals. All of a sudden, they've got 3 scandals going at the same time, and I think I shot you a message the other day saying, Benghazi is the big one. And it wouldn't surprise me if they had these scandals hanging around and they just dumped them out to try and obscure the real scandal, which is Benghazi.
And then we talked on the phone. You said Benghazi is the big one, but you were saying, at least a few days ago, you expect the IRS deal to be the one that actually could bring them down.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the one that really crosses over. That does get right into Nixonian stuff. That's what Nixon was doing. Nixon was using the IRS to literally target his enemy. He was telling the IRS to go out and get my enemy. Now, the real question is going to be where does this come down? And, presidents have gotten better and better at plausible deniability and not leaving any fingerprints on anything. So the question is, will this ever be traceable back to Obama? And the answer is probably not. But the thing that's most striking to me is, this is a culture now, a culture of corruption that's endemic to this administration and administration-wide. I mean, we're seeing it across all of these different agencies. When you have the Justice Department coming in and saying, I don't know what's happening, you have the Attorney General saying, I don't know what's going on in my own building. And I recuse myself from this major thing, so I just had some underling doing whatever it was he was doing. You've got the Secretary of State saying, I don't really know what happened that night in Benghazi. You've got the IRS. We don't know what happened. The president doesn't know what's happened. Nobody seems to know what's going on.
Well, by the way, Joseph Curl, they have a new witness, Hillary and Eric Holder, and all of them announced they're going to have a special spokesman now testify for them, and he's going to come on the show with us right now. This is the White House's statement on any further scandals.
Oh, I see nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning.
So there you go. That's the new White House press secretary.
I know nothing. Well, it was really shocking yesterday. I loved that CNN and MSNBC, they were still doing their OJ reports and their little lighthearted things. And here you've got the Attorney General testifying, saying, I don't know what's happening in the Department of Justice. I don't know what's going on there. I had it, but I have no idea what's happening.
And by the way, as you know, just over the weekend, they were arrogant, saying it's no big deal. Democrats were defending it on MSNBC. Good, we need to persecute Tea Parties. Now they've just sacked the IRS commissioner today. Now Democrats, what does it signify to have Chris Matthews of Slimeball, to have Bill Press, to have all the Atlantic Wire running from Obama and Holder right now? Are we seeing the beginning of a rout? What is the atmosphere there in D.C.?
Well, that's another fascinating part of it. What you've got, whenever I think of the media and how what they did in the second the re-election campaign, the coverage that Obama got. I mean, remember we had unemployment hovering around 8.5%. The economy is terrible. Everything that, Obamacare is going to be a nightmare. Everything that was happening really should have been, fatal for a president trying to get reelected. But the media was the one that, unified behind Obama to continue to sell him. I think what is beginning to happen right now is the media is starting to look at this president and go and say collectively, boy, we backed a big-time loser, and if we don't get off this guy, pretty soon we're all going to go down with him. I mean, this is, liberals like to say that Bush's presidency was the worst ever. It certainly wasn't, and I think we might really literally be looking at one of the worst presidencies in the last 100 years. I mean, we're going to end up, right now the recession is longer than the Depression, the Great Depression. It's longer than the recession that followed the Great Depression. The job numbers are terrible. And then we've got all this corruption and all this crazy stuff going on.
Could you say this is the I know nothing administration? Because they say, oh, the economy's great. They lie about everything. And why do you think suddenly things are turning against them? I mean, I agree with you. There was kind of a hope that other scandals that they think are more survivable, other than lying about a stand down so people can be killed. But I mean, even that, going from crisis to crisis, I have a sense from afar watching this that this could really end in the impeachment of Obama, you name it. I mean, what's your gut?
Well, that's what's been really interesting to me, and I did send you a message on the IRS, thinking that was a really big one, but it was before I really started to think about the way this is going to play out, and we're seeing it play out right now. I mean, yesterday, Obama looks, trying to look like the take charge guy. He makes it sound like he's just heard about this, even though we're hearing that he actually knew about it for several weeks in the White House. So what he does is he comes on TV last night, and he says that he asked his Treasury Secretary to request the resignation from the IRS head. Now, the IRS head, he's only the acting head of the IRS. He's only been in there for a while, and his term was ending in June anyway. So I wasn't really thinking how this thing plays out. So what you have there is you've got a low-level, do-nothing guy who's not really responsible for this, who he now loses his job, and they're going to end up fobbing the rest of this stuff off on these rogue IRS agents in Cincinnati. So that scandal is going to come and go, and you've got on the phone record scandal, you're basically going to have, I mean, maybe this deputy attorney general will be canned over at the Department of Justice, but Eric Holder's going to, it looks like right now, stay above this whole fray. I doubt that Obama's going to kill his good buddy over there and let him go. So these things will play out for several more months, but in the end, you're probably just going to have some lower level guys fall on their swords and disappear, and that's what started to make me wonder if this isn't all there to obscure Benghazi. And when
I tend to agree with you. I mean, that's when we talked on the phone. That's what I think is going on. Is Benghazi? There was a stand down. A bunch of the military were there and witnessed it. Now they're putting out selective emails with 2-day gaps. I agree with you. It's Benghazi that is really what they're afraid of. What's the word on that? Are they going to get away with that as well? Or will they politically be destroyed and be a total lame duck now, but criminally get away with it and just kind of drift into the future?
Yeah, I do think, I mean, remember that was more than 6 months ago on September 11th, 2012. So the media couldn't care less about that story until the Weekly Standards, Stephen Hayes pulled all that stuff up and threw that out there about the emails and about the, who was saying what at the time about the video and about the spontaneous demonstration, which neither of those were ever involved. So the really interesting thing is going to be that's what I've been noticing is how do they change this subject from Benghazi, because Benghazi is reaching critical mass now. So how do we get off Benghazi? Well, let's throw them a couple of scandals that will really consume Washington. And Washington's far more interested in the IRS scandal because they're newer, and the phone scandal than they are in Benghazi. And then the last thing that's fascinating is the White House. They don't know anything about. The White House spokesman doesn't know anything about the AP phone scandal, and pushes that over to the Department of Justice. They're outraged over the IRS thing, and they're taking action on that. But on Benghazi, they dismissed it as just a political witch hunt. And that, again, strikes me as that's what they want. Their jihadis killed everybody, and they ordered a stand down, and a bunch of missiles are missing. And finally, Fox News was covering that over the weekend. So, my gut tells me, Joe Curl, again, Washington Times, joining us,
My gut tells me, though, that they'll be lucky if they're just politically destroyed and then powerless for 3 years. But I don't even see that happening. I smell blood in the water, and I think even starting new wars is not going to politically get them out of this. I see a total loss of confidence in them. All the Democrats I know finally hate Obama and finally are apologizing to me for saying he's a crook. I mean, you know, you're more of a journalist, so you stick to what you can 100% prove. I'm a journalist and a pundit, and I can say as a pundit, I think Obama is politically rotting. What do you say to that?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think you know, there was question as to whether he was really ever going to get anything done with, because remember, he's the one who's created this poisonous atmosphere in Washington. He's the one who has literally spent 4 years haranguing Congress and blaming everything on Congress. Well, now he needs Congress, and you're right. Even some Democrats now are starting to shift on Obama and abandon him. So, yeah, I think politically he's done. I think it's, you know, he's not going to get anything to Congress again, and I think this immigration thing is going to fall apart. I think he wants to get done are going to fall apart because you're beginning to see even Democrats are beginning to wonder about this guy, and they don't have his back anymore. And that's the problem that Obama always had, is that he's been so aggressively critical of Congress that he doesn't really have any friends over there. He doesn't talk with them often. He doesn't, you know, meet with them privately. And
I thought Bush vacationed a lot. Obama's like vacation something like double what Bush did, and seems completely disconnected and arrogant.
Well, if you notice, and I'm sure your listeners have noticed, that has also been kind of the talking point that's been coming out of Washington. Is he's so bright, he's so intellectual, but he has this problem that Spock has of just being disengaged. He's not emotional because he is so intelligent.
Hey, I tell you what, Joe Curl, the Washington Times, and DrudgeReport.com, do 6 more minutes with us on the other side. I want to come back and finish up this thought and ask, what's the other big scandals that Mitch McConnell talks about? I had tried everything. I'd cut back the amount of food I was eating. I was lifting weights and jogging, but nothing was working. My body was literally starving for minerals and trace elements as well as key vitamins. And as soon as I had that, I immediately could eat half of what I was eating previously and be satisfied. Now, there are hundreds of great products at InfoWarsTeam.com, but I want to point out the 3 that have helped me lose 37 pounds in just 2 months. Products like Beyond Tangy Tangerine, Pollen Burst, and Rebound. When I started taking the Tangy Tangerine and other products every day, I lost more than 37 pounds in just 2 months. Now that's results. I want to challenge my listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com and to order just 3 of their products, and you will see the changes in the way you look, feel, and in your appetite almost immediately. Start your journey to health and wellness today. InfoWarsTeam.com. You know, I think the degeneration of Obama and how they tried to sell all this collectivist tyranny is trendy. I just think there's a total collapse in confidence in it. And that's going to go for Republicans as well if they don't deliver liberty. That's why Ted Cruz is rising like a rocket. Rand Paul is rising because they're delivering. And the empty demonization, calling Ted Cruz a bully, calling Rand Paul a kook for pointing out the UN treaty, puts the UN over our guns. It isn't working anymore, and you were finishing up your Spock point, and then I wanted to ask you, what's the next big scandals on the radar and other tidbits, Joe Curl of DrudgeReport.com and the Washington Times.com. What else do you expect to see? What other key nuggets would you like to reveal to the listeners?
Well, I will tell you that, and I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, I have a source at the CIA who said, there's another shoe to drop, and I asked him, you mean there's a 4th shoe? And he said, yeah, at least a 4th shoe, maybe a 5th shoe. So there are things out there. I mean, I think it's not inconceivable that there will be something to this whole, apparently the phone records that were subpoenaed not only had to do with the Associated Press, but had to do with their phone lines in various different places, including in the House, and including phone calls that may or may not have been made from the House cloakroom. Now, the House cloakroom is where members of Congress, members of the House will go to really do the inside, behind-the-scenes horse trading, where they really talk about, they really talk far more candidly than they do on the floor. Probably than they do in lots of other caucus meetings and things like that. This is where it gets down to the nitty-gritty that they really make deals in the cloakroom, where a lot of bills are finally agreed upon. So if they're inside that place, that means that they're inside the halls of Congress. They're literally hearing negotiations on bills and legislation, which is again a frightening cross over the First Amendment and constitutional rights. So I think there's something there. I still think Benghazi, despite the fact that they want to dismiss it as a political witch hunt, and that's how they turn on everything, is that, this is all just political. Well, everything's political, especially with this White House. This White House makes everything political. So there's where we're going to see, more information coming. It was very smart of the White House yesterday to dump out those emails, because what they did was they put out a selective amount of emails, something like 94 emails that, as you mentioned, don't even begin until 67 hours after the attack. And we don't know very much at all.
So almost 3 days, but the lapdog press isn't even pointing that out. They're going, see, this shows they didn't know anything. See, they are idiots.
And see, that's also brilliant by the White House that wants to do this, because when the GOP comes back and says, well, hey, how about the rest of this information? They'll go, look, we're giving you, that's what Jay Clayton likes to do. We've turned over thousands of documents. Now you can tell it's a political witch hunt, because it's never good enough. Whatever we turn over, it's never enough for this crazy lot of Republicans. Well, we're turning over emails that were sent 67 hours after the attack, which means they probably by that point, you would assume, have gotten their story straight.
Oh yeah, no. Well, no, that's what the Petraeus email's about. Is he goes, I don't like the talking point in the narrative I've been given. It's not true. So they even left that in there. Maybe they're lazy or stupid. This is such a cheap trick, though. I mean, this would be like if I was going out of a parking garage and they wanted my parking ticket, and I said, you know what, I don't have that, but here's a phone book, and they went, no, I want the parking ticket. Hey, I gave you a phone book. That's thousands of pieces of paper. Hey, listen, Joe Curl, people can follow your great columns, at Political Theater over at the Washington Times, and a lot of it appears, Monday mornings at drudgereport.com. I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for all the time, bro.
Sure, man. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. We'll see you. There goes Joseph Curl. Great guy, great reporter. And in the last 30 minutes, I had Joseph Curl of drudgereport.com and WashingtonTimes.com on with us, and I was saying bye to him at the end of the hour, and he said, hey, you raised Petraeus. That's the big point we need to get to, so he's graciously held over another 5 minutes with us. If you just joined us, the whole thing's unraveling, obviously. They've released, from 67 hours later, almost 3 days later, select emails acting like this is the whole data dump. And the media, I have the headlines here, the White House knew nothing about Benghazi. They were bumbling idiots. What an old trick. Almost 3 days after they've got their talking points straight. But Petraeus is in the email saying, I don't like these talking points. I don't like this story. This basically isn't true. And Curl on air was saying he's got CIA sources, so do I. I have Defense Department sources, like Colonel Schaefer, who swears he'll come on, but gets threatened not to since he came on and dropped bombshells back in October, right after Benghazi. And so Curl was saying there's more on Petraeus coming. Petraeus knows. Is that why they ran him out? Is that why they fired a bunch of CENTCOM? Joe Curl, what's the big scoop on Benghazi, the other shoes to drop, and what do you know about Petraeus?
Well, that's the fascinating thing, is that when Petraeus happened, remember he was head of the CIA, and the CIA was heavily involved in Benghazi. In fact, some sources have told me that there was the embassy there in Tripoli, there was the annex as well in the consulate in Benghazi, an annex someplace nearby, and people, many people have talked about whether there was a dark site in Benghazi, that they were taking some people suspected terrorists to a place. The CIA may have been heavily involved there. We really don't know. But it was remarkable that the head of the CIA, a four-star general, Petraeus, was drummed out so quickly over a sex scandal. Remember, this was after Benghazi happened, and there were all kinds of speculation. No one could prove anything, but there was speculation that Petraeus knew an awful lot and was very unhappy with the with the dealings with the White House and the story that was formulated and the back and forth that now we are starting to see from these emails took place between the CIA, the State Department, and the White House. So Petraeus is the one, I think, who knows an awful lot more about this. Now we see it in this last email. Petraeus says, after they finally get their talking points together, leave out the terrorist attack, leave out al-Qaeda, don't mention anything about a spontaneous protest. Now we see that Petraeus said, well, I'd rather not use these talking points if you don't mind, because they're not accurate. They're not even the CIA, who actually knows what happened there, was telling the State Department, here's what we're comfortable with. And the State Department, for political reasons, the White House, for political reasons, was saying, well, we still don't want to say that. The State Department didn't want anything said because they're trying to protect Hillary. The White House didn't want anything said because they were trying to win re-election. I mean, this is 2 months before re-election. The last thing they can have is a terrorist attack under this president. So
it was a protest, and we can now call 9/11 a protest under this new labeling.
Right, exactly. So Petraeus is the one I would really watch for. I think Petraeus he obviously knows everything that's happened there. He's obviously not exactly happy with the way he was treated and drummed out. I mean, it's not unheard of for, certainly the Russians will set up their politicians with scandal.
Sure. Why doesn't Congress? Why don't the Republicans call Petraeus for Benghazi hearings?
Well, that would be a brilliant move. I mean, if they could bring him in. The question is whether, can you still call Hillary Clinton? She was Secretary of State then, she isn't now. Can she be, called back in to testify in front of Congress? Because obviously her testimony now is all suspect. I mean, what she said under oath in front of the House committees is now, heavily questioned. So can you call her back in? Can you bring back in anyone who's involved, the CIA director like Petraeus?
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to get you back up on that soon. In fact, I see you have a column from a while back saying, watch for Petraeus in the Benghazi probe scandal. So you called it. Joe Curl, again, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Alex.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.